Hello everyone and welcome to this week's behind the scenes devlog video, and this week I'm going to be getting back to working on Equilinox, which is something that I haven't actually done for almost 2 weeks now, because for the first half of last week I was ill, and then the second half I was just working on the tutorial, and then over Easter I was visiting friends in Wolfsburg, and I just got back last night. So getting back to work on Equilinox today. It's now Wednesday, and hopefully I can make some good progress for the rest of this week. So to start off the week, I've once again been working my way through a to-do list, and I've already managed to get quite a few little updates done this morning so far. So for example, the DP per minute counter now only changes every 2 seconds instead of constantly, which was a bit of a problem because it was changing so fast that you couldn't actually read it. You actually get the payout for this DP per minute every 15 seconds now, because previously you got the whole amount at the end of each minute, but now you get a quarter of the amount every 15 seconds. And also, when you have one of these big GUIs open now, you can't interact with the world behind it, which was causing a bit of a problem with the entity GUIs overlapping with the shop GUI, but that is now no longer the case. It is 12 o'clock now, coming up to lunchtime, and for the rest of the morning I've been working on improving the entity GUIs. So you can see here that there's now a bit at the top left corner which shows the tier of the entity in Roman numerals, and this is basically how rare the entity is. And I've also added a grey band for the title there. And this actually took a lot longer than it should have done because I was having quite a few problems with texture filtering, which turned out to be a problem with how I was exporting the textures from GIMP. GIMP was making all of the transparent pixels black, and then when the texture was being filtered, it was mixing the black and the green along the edge of this circle here. But that's all fixed now, and it is all looking pretty nice. This afternoon I've been working on the entity GUIs, and I've changed the method that gets the info from an entity to return a list of GUI components rather than just strings. So this means that components can now add images, icons, buttons, or options into one of these entity GUIs instead of just a name and a value, which is what it does at the moment. So this will allow for a lot more options and a lot more flexibility with what can go on in one of these entity GUIs. It is 5 o'clock, and as you can see I'm having a little bit of difficulty getting these components to add into the entities GUIs properly. There seems to be something going wrong with the way that the text is resizing now that the text is in the child components of the resizable frame rather than directly in the resizable frame. So I'm just debugging that at the moment and trying to work out what's going wrong. For the rest of the day, I've just created this icon here, which now goes into the entity GUIs and indicates which color that entity is, if that entity has a customizable color associated with it. And obviously this makes use of the update that I made earlier today, allowing the entity components to add more than just text information to these entity GUIs. Thursday morning, and already today I've made a sub to-do list of the original to-do list, and I'm just going to be making my way through that this morning. This morning I've just been working on sound effects, and I've created this sound cache class which makes sure that sound effects are only loaded up when they need to be, and then when they're not used anymore they get deleted. And now I'm just implementing a couple of new sound effects for the sheep, which were made by Josh Monson, and I'll just play them now. Obviously quite a bit more realistic than the ones that I made by making weird noises into my microphone. This afternoon I've been working on a variety of little changes and fixes. Firstly, I spent a long time trying to debug why the dynamic objects weren't fading out when the camera gets far enough away from them, and I found that I'd made a silly mistake in the calculations somewhere, so I fixed that. Also, these big GUIs now close when you click off them to the right, which is a little bit more convenient. And I also just did a few other things, but I'm going to stop now because I'm going to meet some friends, and then I'm going to IKEA because I need to buy a few new things for the flat. Just finishing off for the day now, and this evening I've just been answering YouTube comments and emails as well, which is one thing that I did actually manage to do a lot of last week when I wasn't really working on the game. I managed to go through hundreds of emails and pretty much got up to date with my emails now, so that makes a nice change for once. It is a lovely sunny Friday morning, and today I'm going to be working on the entity system, and hopefully I'll have some time to get started on the breeding mechanic as well. Today I've spent all morning preparing the entity system because this is pretty much going to be the most important part of Equilinox. This is all the stuff to do with the breeding system, how entities interact with each other, how they live, die, how they depend on biomes. All that stuff is in the entity system, which I'm about to start programming this afternoon. So I've spent a lot of time planning it all out, thinking it all through, going through the code and just working out how it's all going to work. But I'm going to stop for lunch now and also go for a jog in the park because it is a lovely sunny day today. So before I start work on the programming side of things, I wanted to have a few more entities that I could test all of the growing and life cycle things with. So I've created a new grass entity, or I've expanded on the first one and given it 5 different stages of life. So now in the game, when I place, that's not grass, when I place grass, you can see that it places seeds, and then over time these will grow about every 40 seconds or so. They grow to the next stage, and after a while they will be fully grown tufts of grass. Next up this afternoon, I've been working on breeding, and I created this breeding component here, which any animal or plant that can breed will have, but they each can have their own implementation of the breeding AI. So, for example, plants are obviously going to reproduce in a different way to animals. So for now, I've created this very simple plant breeding AI, which basically allows plants to spread over a certain area. So if I plant a few bits of grass here, as they start to grow up, they'll also start to seed more grass tufts around this area. So you can see that the grass is slowly spreading over the whole of this hill. And this will just go on indefinitely at the moment because I haven't implemented dyeing, so it actually gets out of hand quite quickly. Just been doing a bit more work on the breeding system to stop trees or plants of any kind spreading over the whole world. So now they only reproduce in a certain area. So when you place a tree, it has a base position, and then it can only reproduce and create offspring within a certain radius of that base position, but also its offspring inherit that base position, and so they too can only create offspring within a certain radius of that original tree. Also, I've implemented dyeing, so the trees die after a certain amount of time, and the chance of them dying is increased when there are more trees around. So this stops the population going out of hand, and it creates a kind of equilibrium where generally the same number of trees are alive at any one time. So I just added another update to the system, and that is that if you take a tree out of the radius of the original base position, it will update its base position, allowing it to now reproduce in a different area. So after a while, you'll see that another area of trees has now emerged. Good morning everyone, it is Saturday, and this morning I need to edit together this week's behind the scenes devlog video, which hopefully I'll finish before lunchtime so that I can do a bit more work on the entity system this afternoon. It is coming up to 1 o'clock now, and for the whole morning I've just been working on today's devlog video, and now I'm stopping for some lunch, which I'm having in my brand new bowl that I got in IKEA the other day because my old bowl was chipped, and just after I'd bought this, literally just after I'd given the money, I went to put it in my shopping cart and I dropped it. So this bowl is now also chipped. So I've just been playing around a bit more with the breeding mechanic, and what I've done now is to allow the sheep to eat the grass. At the moment the sheep don't actually move to the grass to eat it. I haven't changed their movement at all, but they do in the code choose a piece of grass every now and again to eat, and that causes the grass to die. So over here we've got a patch of grass which has no sheep, and that's just the same situation as before. It's in an equilibrium and the population is staying at a fairly constant amount, and the grasses are just growing and dying without any interference from the sheep. Then over here we've got another patch of grass which has a few sheep on it, and obviously the sheep are increasing the death rate of the grass in this area. So there's less grass here, but it's still at an equilibrium. So if I speed this up, you can see that the amount of grass isn't decreasing at all. It's staying fairly constant, even though it's less grass than in the other patch. And if I go ahead and add some more sheep, then the amount of grass decreases even more, but it still stays at an equilibrium at a certain amount of grass. But of course, the more sheep I add, the lower the population goes, and eventually that population of grass is going to be 0. And then at this point, obviously, all the sheep would die as well because they don't have any more grass to eat. So that is going to be it for another week of working on Equilinox, and next time I'm going to be continuing on with the entity system and the breeding mechanic, and also starting some work on breeding trees. And then after that, there's not that much more to go. I've still got some work to do with GUIs. I've got to do the shops where you can spend your DP, and also I wanted to have some GUIs where you could identify a species and also see the breeding trees, so you can see what you have to breed together to create a certain species. And then after that, it's just going to be a case of creating all the different animals and plants, making all the models, making all of the AIs and stuff like that. But yeah, that is it for this week. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. Do subscribe if you haven't already. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you all next time.